So what we've done tonight is we put together four professionals. Tom Fitzgerald on my left is an architect. Mary Brennan is an interior designer. Eileen Scott is a realtor, and I'm a home builder and remodeler. When Mary came to me with the idea of this panel, she said, wouldn't it be interesting to present a topic examining value? Examining how does the typical homeowner decide what project is going to be prioritized in terms of what they're going to do next to their home. So the discussion ensued, and we talked about who the right professionals would be to be on the panel. We talked about an architect, so we invited Tom. We talked about a realtor, we invited Eileen, and that was the initiation or the start of this process. Our topic tonight is evaluating your design build decisions and enhancing your enjoyment of your home while adding value. So quickly, I'll just tell you, I've been a home builder since I joined my dad in '85. He was a builder his whole career. I kind of grew up with it at the kitchen table while he built homes, meaning speaking to subs and contractors. I've probably built 300 houses in my career and done dozens of remodels. That's all you need to know, I guess. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I'm Eileen Scott, and I've been with White Realtors for 15 years. And last year I closed $33 million in business. So I've been very good at guiding people through the process of, should I stay and expand do an addition or move? We're at a crossroads. Could you help us with that? And what can I do to prepare my house for market?
Nice to see everyone here tonight. My name is Mary Brennan. I'm a professional interior designer. I've been working in the field for about 18 years or so. I like to say that I specialize in construction and remodeling. And what that means is I do the decorating, and it's a wonderful part and component of what I do. But I really do take on typically projects that are much more involved in space planning and value planning, if you will, always having to do with construction and remodeling on one front or another.
My name is Tom Fitzgerald with Fitzgerald Architecture Studio. We are a boutique style architecture firm located in High Bridge, New Jersey. There are 8 of us, and I've been an architect for nearly 20 years and have had my own practice as Fitzgerald Architecture Studio since 2001. So we're happy to be here and looking forward to answering some questions and a great dialogue with the panelists. So I thank everyone here.
Does the typical homeowner that you encounter understand the design, build, and I'm going to add 2 words to that typical phrase. I'm going to add not only design, build, but design, build, budget, decision process, because I think those 4 elements are important.
I think that's a great question, Jay, and it's one that all of us could spend hours on. There's a lot that can be learned from all of us, but the answer to the question is generally no. And that's why we've assembled ourselves, is to help educate the public in what the process is, how you can take that information and relate it to the project that you're undertaking, and how the return on the investment can be maximized. So from the architectural standpoint, let's go back and ask Jay to rephrase the question again.
Okay. What does a typical homeowner understand the design build? And again, the typical phrase is design build, but in my view, from my experience, the real process is design, build, budget, decision process, because all 4 of those activities need to happen before checks are cut and permits are pulled.
There's a lot of information that's getting thrown out in that question. Design, build, budget, process.
Decision
process. From an architectural standpoint, the design, build, budget process, leaving out the decision part for a moment, starts right from the beginning. We, as a team, need to have some idea of where our clients are coming from with a budget so that we can design accordingly, not only design, but plan, build, and look for the right solutions that are going to fit within that budget. If we're designing and building things, and usually it would never get to the build part, but if we're designing things that don't fit a budget and that can't be built, then the project has failed. So I think that's a good intro to the topic, and one that I'd like to pass along and hear from.
Well, Mary, let me ask you, you as an interior designer with your experience, why is it important that you're involved in the early phases of design build process? Let's talk about real life scenarios. You've been involved in many new home constructions, and when you were involved early in the process, why was it beneficial to the homeowner, and what were you adding to the process that would be of value to others as a professional?
And that's an interesting way to look at it, that often people don't think about the design until the interior design rather, until the closer to the end, or they're getting close to, it's looking like a house and it's starting to look like sheetrock is up, and they're thinking of it in terms of the decorating, which, as I mentioned, that's certainly a wonderful part of it. But when you've got an interior designer on the team from the beginning, number one, I'm thinking about things that probably your builder, no matter how wonderful they are, they're not thinking about. Just in terms of your furnishings and things that you want to achieve, how your family or your guests are really going to use that home and interact in the space. And then also knowing those things way far in advance. There's oftentimes that I can certainly think of many instances where we were able to get a few more things on the wish list, so to speak, because we were thinking about them so early on, and we're designing it on paper, and I'm talking to the architect, and I'm talking to the builder. How difficult would this be to put in a dumbwaiter so that we could get the snacks, the popcorn from the kitchen down to the theater for the kids, and they don't have to carry the big, things all the way down the stairs themselves, the young kids. It's easy to do when it's so early on. It's easy to do when it's on paper and we're conferencing about where can we, build the little shaft to put this in, and it's really just not a big deal. You want to do that after the fact, it's really expensive to put that little thing in. So there's a lot of wish list things that can be achieved by having the full complement of professionals as early in the process as possible.
I think that's a great segue to, a couple weeks ago I was looking at another builder's home, a house that was being remodeled, and it was a fabulous kitchen in the Mendham area. I won't mention the builder's name. I'll be selfish about that. But he's doing a fantastic job, and what he had in this kitchen had to design an enormous stone mantle over the cooktop, and because I'm in the construction business and I happened to meet the kitchen designer there, I asked him, when were you called in, because I can see the weight and the immenseness of this piece, and clearly, and the answer was just what you just said, that he imagined that, or he and the designer and he and the client imagined this stone mantle. It was a stone mantle as larger than than what's up here, and it worked nicely, but it had to be supported from the beginning. The architect had to design it. The weight of it had to be calculated. How big that wall was, probably 2 by 10 instead of 2 by 4 to support it. So, that when details of the sort, like you mentioned, dumbwaiter or even laundry chute are going to be created, you can't do them when you're at the sheetrock or stud phase. It has to be early on. Let me ask Eileen, you are often called when people are thinking about, where do I go? Am I going to sell, or am I going to stay and fix up? How do you field that question in your everyday, and how often do you get that question?
Well, I would say that my value proposition is that it's very individual, case by case. So I look at their needs and their financial means, and then I advise for that particular person. So if someone has a split level, that home that can only trade at a certain value and they're going to over improve, I might advise them that they'd be best off moving, and that looking at floor plan is the key to any purchase. So when you're making a buy or a sell decision, so on the sell side, I help people make the most money they can by investing some money in getting the house prepared, taking down the wallpaper, making it neutral, putting things in bins, doing the work. Yeah, this is work to make money. So I advise them on how to get top dollar for their property. This is a business. So decluttering, neutralizing, getting stagers in, doing the work, presenting the product, getting the product to market. And then on the buy side, when they're looking at a property, I guide them in the way that of all the things that we looked at, this has a floor plan that would be conducive to a money-making event based on the location, the neighborhood, and so on. And down the road, this lends itself to taking down this wall and making this kitchen double the size. You can invest in that because they didn't have the dollar to buy the house that had the kitchen done. It's so many different levels. I have an appointment tomorrow with someone who said, I sold them the house 2 or 3 years ago, and they were going to put on $1 million addition. And we're going out to look and investigate, not doing that and putting their dollars into another town. We're going to look at Far Hills, a better tax structure than where they are, and that might be a better decision for them. And they'll make that decision, but I'll help them maneuver the waters to make the best business decision. Maybe they'll decide, you know what, we want to stay where we are. We'll be at the top of the neighborhood, but we won't be over the top. The neighborhood could hold. And then there's people I can direct them to if they need architects and builders and so on. And so I try to guide people to making the best business decision.
That's a good way for me to jump to you, Tom. Let's suppose that Eileen's prospects or clients or friends are the Smiths, and the Smiths call you next week and they say, you know, we're still in this intellectual debate with ourselves about what to do with that house. Do we stay and improve it or do we move? You know, pick up from there. I'm sure you've had that client in front of you, and you know, what would be explain your process and how you would go to their site and deal with that question.
Ironically enough, we do have a client at the Smiths right now. So, their dilemma is a little bit different, and certainly many of our clients are coming to us with a similar situation where they want to invest in their home or they want to move. They're not quite sure what they're going to do, and they are looking for the guidance to either help them make that decision, because it's a very large decision. So if we are looking at the value of the home in terms of the neighborhood and the area, the surrounding area, and if it's a $500,000 home and the houses in the area are comped at $650,000 and they want to put a $300,000 addition on, it may not be the best return on their investment. So at that point, if they're looking at a $650,000 home, what can that get them in another neighborhood? So we're always in tune with, outside of the architecture, trying to give them the guidance that they need in order to better prepare themselves to make the decisions. Our job, all of our jobs really, is to get the information out on the table so they can make educated decisions.
The Smiths have come to me and with the same question: what do I do from here? I'm deciding whether to move or to improve the house. And you know, Eileen had given me a lay of the land on what their economic goals and their budget would be. I would start by going to the home site and armed with the information that Eileen was going to share with me about, okay, Jay, the house is worth $1 million. Their budget is, let's say, $500,000, and they could spend $500,000 more, so they could have a total project of $1.5 million. Where do we go from here? So that's the hypothetical. I would be in there with the questions like, is the home surroundings what you want? Do you have a backyard that has a southern exposure? Do you have the features that you want here that we can improve upon? Will the neighborhood support it? You know, is $1.5 million invested here going to be thrown away, or is it going to be potentially creating equity in the investment? So those would be the kind of approaches I would take, and then I would be capable of giving them an idea, a ballpark idea of what it would cost, what their $500,000 would get them, and so that's how that would be my approach to it. And if they wanted then to go into more detail, then I would say, well, if you're ready to stay here, then we need a concept plan and a design. So that would be where I would go from that point.
And sometimes, Jay, before we jump into speaking with Mary about this, our job is to listen to our clients. And many times, after educating the client, and with the situation or the example that I had posed before with a $500,000 home, the homes in the surrounding area are valued at $650,000, and they want to put a $300,000 addition on. After telling them that and giving them and arming them with that information, they still decide that they want to add that $300,000 addition and outprice themselves in the neighborhood because there's some either sentimental value or there's other value to them that may not be recouped on the market. Then by all means, we're not here to tell you what you have to do. We're here to guide you through the process, and if spending your money in that fashion is what you wish to do, then certainly we're going to help you do that. But it would be foolish for us not to educate you in the fashion that we're trained to along the way.
I think when we were informally sort of talking about the concept of at what point are you over improving versus, what is it going to do for you in terms of lifestyle, and that is something that often can get sort of brushed aside or minimized in that kind of a conversation, because you certainly do. Obviously, we're all concerned about the value of our home and the equity that we have in the home and what's it worth, and if I put it on the market, how much am I going to realize back? But there is such a thing as experienced value of the home. What is that particular improvement going to do for your lifestyle? How is it going to enhance your life, the way you really live? And that may be anything from, obvious things like major kitchen improvements and things like that to, doing exterior projects where, all of a sudden you're able to use an entirely new aspect of your house that you've never been able to use before, or you've not enjoyed it as much as you could enjoy it. And there are all kinds of subtle things that are important in our lives. How do we entertain? Can our family come there comfortably? Can our elderly parents come and be there safely? Is the home visitable easily by others? And what can we do with it when we're doing those wonderful things, when we're having holidays and having pool parties and things like that? And those things really matter on a concrete level to our day-to-day life. So that's really not something that I like to see minimized from that discussion. You do have that dollar property value, and it is important, but there is a life value as well, and that should really enter into the decision-making process, I think.
I guess as a transition from the big project where we've been talking for 5 or 10 minutes, I can throw it to you, Eileen, and with a question of, it's not always about the major improvement. Sometimes it's about the small, little things. Sometimes it's about, do I put on a deck? Is it a good return on my investment? Or should I fix the bathroom? So maybe you could shift the level into from a macrocosm of a major project into a smaller scale in terms of more what you run into every day. The questions of, do I do painting or bathroom remodel or kitchen? Let's bring it into that focus for the moment.
Particularly in this market climate, what always sells is pristine homes. That people, I have multiple offers this week. I listed 2 houses. They're both under contract in a week. And people scratching their eyes out to get these houses. So why? right? Why do some houses sit and some houses move? It's always the common denominator of pristine readiness. That you walk in the house and the walls look good, the floors look good, the people have the lights on, music on, and give them directions when the house is shown. You have every light in the house on, soft music on. Take down all the pictures. It's their home. They're going into their home, not your home. You don't want to be there. All these things matter. And getting the house ready, half of them say, "You made me not want to move." Getting their house ready for market because they're so pleased. And I wish they almost called me a little bit sooner so they didn't have the stress to get on the market so quickly and the changes that would be required to get them top dollar. So I think that a lot of people will call me and say, I'm kicking it around and I don't want to bother you. And I'm not, it's not a bother. Why I'm successful is because it's all about you. It's not about me. It's about helping you get the most money out of your investment, and I'm trained to advise on how to go about that. And if you have a deck that's falling down and they're going to nail you on a credit, why don't you take care of it and do that? And if you don't have the money, and that's a different story. I'm talking about people who are in financial distress. And if there's people in financial distress, well, then there's sweat equity. You can paint, and you can get ready, and you can clean, and it can smell good when you walk in, and all those things. So to get to market, this is a business. This is work. It's not sign the listing and go to the gym. It's work. It's a partnership. And the more pristine the house, I love when I get a house when they did the kitchen, the deck is nice, everything's done, they've enjoyed it, they love their time there, and now I can bring it to the market and get them top dollar.
One of the things that we recognize being value to our client and our audience is, when is it that you call in the professional during the process of evaluating whether or not you're going to add on, renovate, move, whatnot. And naturally we're all going to jump up and say, I'm the first one to get called. But I think really the value of having a team of professionals who are all on the same page is we all want to be called early, and we all want to be involved with one another early, because the process is much more than architecture. The process is much more than building. It's much more than real estate. It's much more than design. It's all the elements of those four things and even others that have to come together in order to make the project successful.
I think probably all of us sitting here are very like-minded in terms of our feelings on the team being very important to the process. And we've all worked many, many times, whether together or separately on other projects, on a construction design build team. And the members of that team are the architect, the interior designer, the builder, and the client. And it's all fits together. And certainly my experience, and we've talked about this informally before, my experience has always been that when you get those professionals involved and they're all comfortable and embrace the idea of working on that design build team, it's to the better of the project. It always elevates the project.
My services are free. So if you call me and you're asking me how much is my home worth, I would like a marketing and pricing plan of my home and home readiness, that doesn't cost you anything. When I'm hired and I'm successful and I've accomplished and I've closed the transaction, that's when I have my services rendered. That's when I get paid. So I want to endear people to call me. I have three homes I am going to be listing, but they're not going to be on the market because they called me early. They're getting them ready, and they'll be prepared to come out and will be spot sold because they feel that they're imposing, and that is not the case.
The planning process
I have a way about doing that.
is something that the investment up front, whether it be a small amount or a larger amount, whatever the investment is, the investment is critical because it's much more effective and economic to spend the money during the planning process to figure things out as a team rather than to think in a tunnel. You know, I might think that I have everything figured out as an architect, but then the project goes to construction and Jay comes back and says, I can't build this. Or it's going to cost me $20,000 more to build this because the design is too elaborate. So the investment during the planning process is really critical, and making sure that you're evaluating all of the options and solutions can always help bring in a project on budget or come up with economical solutions.
I'm here when you need me, and the earlier you get started, the better for particularly the list side, the buy side is just getting qualified and setting your needs and moving forward. And sometimes I go on many appointment and people think that their house was valued differently, and when I tell them the truth, to give them the parenthesis of their pricing, their high and their low, a lot of times on appointments they decide to stay and be grateful. They say, you know, I thought I would have more equity here. And so my goal is to meet your needs and help you prepare for the future and make good business decisions and help you expand and point you to the directions of staging your house for success or adding on, and guiding you in those ways as best I can.
Well, I think we communicated a lot of ideas that we certainly feel are important. I'm very intrigued to hear if it's triggered any questions for any of you. But I suppose I would really just sort of sum up to say that any and all projects having to do with the home, whether it's a large improvement or a small improvement, they all have value on many different levels. There's, you know, as we talked about, there's a dollar value, there's an experience value. It's always worth investing in your home. So I guess that would sort of sum up my position on it.
At the end of the day, most of our clients are concerned about the budget. And whether it be a $100,000 renovation or a $1 million renovation, the approach that we take as a team is going to be the same. And quite frankly, a lot of the times, the more challenging project is going to be in the $100,000 renovation rather than in the $1 million renovation. So we're always in tune with the budget and what the client is trying to achieve, and not necessarily, you know, the client sometimes is afraid or embarrassed to discuss their budget right out of the gate. Sometimes they're embarrassed to discuss a $1 million budget, and sometimes they're embarrassed to discuss a $100,000 budget. But the point is the challenge can be just as great or even greater for a smaller project. So clients shouldn't feel ashamed or embarrassed to get that number right out there, so the dialogue can be true right from the beginning.
If the client shares with us what their financial goals are, we can help them start and finish a project much more quickly. And many times I've been offered plans to bid, and the plans that were created by other architects are beyond the scope of the budget, and they get thrown away. These things happen. It's a waste of time and energy. No architect is happy to design something, whether they're paid or not. I mean, we assume they're all going to be paid for their services at all times, but they're not. I know architects are creative people. That's why they became architects, and they want to see their product built. And if it comes down to the second word beyond budget, and that's trust. If you are working with a builder or an architect or a realtor or a designer that you trust, their goal is to give you the feedback from the breadth of their experience over the course of all the projects they've been involved with, to help you make the quickest decision to know whether you're going to move forward, whether it's move in or out of a neighborhood, whether it's going to remodel the bathroom. And again, you know, we've talked about large-scale projects, we've talked about small-scale projects. Each and every one of them need the professional that's in front of you at one point in time to know whether to go forward. The next subject is going to be on Thursday, May 12th. We're going to talk about aligning your dream with your budget, how to balance both. And on Thursday, June 9th, we're going to talk about thinking beyond the patio, maximizing your property's potential.